Good day everyone, I am Ganatiri Santos, studying at Pangasinan State University Ordinary Campus, taking up Bachelor of Secondary Education major in Science. Today, I'm going to discuss critical evaluation and promotion, Philippine nationalism. Here, we have learning objectives which are to know the meaning and relevance of nationalism and to identify the factors that gave rise to the Filipino nationalism. Before we start, I have prepared here at least 5 questions for you to answer to know what are your knowledge or insights about this lesson. Let's now proceed to the discussion. The meaning of nationalism. Nationalism is simply love for country with all its inhabitants, a state of awareness that a nation does exist and is made of people who owe allegiance not only to a tribe, clan, or region, nor to any religious or political entity. In the 19th century, Philippine nationalism was born. The people began to think of themselves as one nation with common origin, customs and tradition, history and destiny, and aspirations. They wanted to be separated or independent of Spain. We have several factors that gave rise to Filipino nationalism. First, we have the opening of Suez Canal. It made the Philippines closer to the world trade, communications, and travel. More travelers and information came to the Philippines. Next is we have the spread of liberalism. Liberal ideas from Europe filtered in. Thoughts of famous political philosophers were made known through books and periodicals brought into the country by men foreign ports. Third is we have the improvement in transportation and communication facilities brought Filipinos closer and made them realize their common predicament. Next is we have the Principalia were able to send their children to schools and even to schools in Spain, where their children were exposed to liberal ideas. The fifth one is the rise of the new middle class. In 1830, Spain opened the ports of Manila to the world, followed by opening of other ports in the other areas of the Philippines. Chinese and Spanish mestizos who owned lands that were used to plant and harvest products for export, and those who engage in import and export businesses became the middle class. They stood in between the Principalia and the masses. Next is we have the sentiment against the principles. There was a mounting dissatisfaction against the principles, accommodated as intermediaries of the Spanish government from the inception of its colonial rule. The masses had been skeptical about the local aristocracy due to their proportion of influence in the society. Next is we have the racial prejudice. The Spaniards regarded the Filipinos as indios or belonging to inferior race. The preconceived notion of the Spanish colonizers that the natives could not rise beyond their limited intelligence instigated the enlightened Filipinos to struggle for equality. Next is we have the cultural changes. The educational reforms of 1863 improved the standards of education in primary level. Qualified Filipinos were able to pursue higher education. The ilustrados or the enlightened ones became the new breed of the Filipinos. Next is we have the secularization of the church. The Council of Trent, 1545 to 63, affirmed that secular priests be appointed to administer the parishes in the colony. In 1567, Pope Pius V issued the Exponi Nobis, which allowed the regular clergy to serve as parish priests without diocesan authorization and be exempted from bishop's authority. The regular orders resisted diocesan visitation because this would place them under two superiors, the head of the religious order and the bishop. This caused expulsion of priests who refused the visitation of parishes by representatives of the bishops. The parishes vacated by Jesuits were given to the native secular or those who don't belong to any religious order. The return of Jesuits in 1859 and the desecularization policy affected the native seculars. It transformed into Filipinization issue since the secular priests were mostly Filipinos. In 1870, Archbishop Gregorio Meliton Martinez wrote to the Spanish regent advocating secularization and mentioned that discrimination against Filipino priests would encourage anti-Spanish sentiments. Other proponents of the secularization movement included Fathers Pedro Pillaes, Jose Burgos, Mariano Gomez, and Jacinto Zamora. And lastly is the Cavite Mutiny of 1872. Governor-General Rafael de Izquierdo replaced Governor de la Torre in 1871, and he discarded the liberal measures. He abolished the privileges of artisanal workers and engineer corps regarding exemption from tribute and forced labor. In January 20, 1872, about 200 Filipino soldiers and dock workers of Cavite, under the leadership of Sergeant La Madrid, mutinied and killed their Spanish officers. It was suppressed and La Madrid and 41 others were executed in Bagumbayan. Fathers Jose Burgos, Mariano Gomez, and Jacinto Zamora were accused of treason to Spain and tried in an unfair trial. They were sentenced to death by the Garrote on February 17, 1872 in Bagumbayan. Some were thrown into jail, while others were exiled to Marianas Islands on March 14, 1872. Between 1872 and 1892, national consciousness was growing among Filipinos who had settled in Europe. The execution of Gomburza hastened the growth of Filipino nationalism. The concept of nationhood coincided with the development of concept of Filipinos. Now we're going to talk about the propaganda movement. The unjust execution of Fathers Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora was a turning point in the history of the Philippines. It marked the beginning of a new era as a propaganda period. Here's the meaning of propaganda movement. A propaganda movement is a peaceful campaign organization using literary endeavor as mouthpiece to publicize the political, economic, and religious problems in the colony. Among the specific goals were representation of the Philippines in the Cortes or the Spanish Parliament, secularization of the clergy, legalization of Spanish and Filipino equality, creation of a public school system independent of the friars, abolition of the polo or label service and the bandala for sale of local products to the government, guarantee of basic freedom of speech and association, equal opportunity for Filipinos and Spaniards to enter government service. Now let's talk about the importance or the relevance of nationalism. Nationalism can foster a sense of identity and unity among people within a nation, promoting a shared culture, history, and values. It can also contribute to social cohesion, political stability, and collective sense of pride. However, excessive nationalism may lead to exclusionary attitudes, conflict with other nations, or disregard for global cooperation. The importance of nationalism often depends on how it is balanced with a broader perspective that recognizes the interdependence of nations in today's interconnected world. And that's all for my discussion. And now let's proceed to post test. I have prepared here at least 10 questions for you to answer and write it on the piece of paper and send it to me via DM. Thank you.